Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Autism Spectrum Certificate information session from Okanagan College. So this certificate is designed for people who work, live, and interact with people who are on the autism spectrum. The courses in the program include both theory and practical skills. So students learn many strategies and tips and about resources that can greatly enhance the quality of interactions with people who are autistic. Many of our students are parents, education assistants, teachers, and health professionals who seek to better understand the people in their life on the spectrum. My name is Jill Panton, and I would like to show you what we'll be talking about in this information session. We'll talk about the program, look at the schedule, cost, admission requirements, go through the courses. You'll get to meet the instructor of the program and the person who developed the program, Joanne Poole. And you'll have a chance to send your questions to me via email with the contact information at the end. So as I said, I'm Jill Panton. I am the program coordinator for the Autism Spectrum Certificate. I have been working with this program for quite a number of years and have been working with Joanne on various different other projects involving this topic throughout those years. So I would like to ask Joanne if she could introduce herself so you get to know a little bit about her.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. So I am a registered nurse. I've been a registered nurse for about 30 years and had 3 kids, and my middle one was really challenging. So when he was about 11, he ended up with multiple diagnoses, one of them being the autism spectrum disorder. So at that point, I switched my career from teaching nursing and working in critical care to working with in the autism education, because I found it really frustrating that I couldn't find what I needed. I learned more in parking lots talking to other parents than I could find looking at books. So we put together this 80-hour course, all specifically related to autism. And I've been loving the work, and I really look forward to sharing my, I guess it's been 10 years of teaching the course and all the information that I've gathered with you. Thanks, Jill.
Okay. So we offer this program, we offer it in the winter semester every year. And it's delivered online with a mix of synchronous and asynchronous learning. So the classes run from January till April, Tuesday and Thursday evenings from 6 to 9 p.m. And so those times, those are your synchronous times where you'll get together with your class and with Joanne, and you'll have a class online at that time. And Joanne will go over some of the other work that's required in the program a little bit later. The cost of the program currently is about $1,960. The textbooks are about $200, and we send you a textbook list before the program starts so that you know which ones to purchase. But we do have them all available in the bookstore here, or they can be ordered online. The admission requirements for the program, you need to have a BC high school graduation or mature student status. And so what that means is that you need to be out of school for at least 1 year as of the first day of classes. So really a 19 plus to get into the course. And the other requirement is 60% in grade 12 English or equivalent. And there are lots of equivalents and lots of ways to reach that equivalence. So what I would recommend that you do is that you go online to the program page, which is where you found this information session, and you click on the alternatives link, and you'll be able to find out all of the different ways to meet that requirement. The next thing to do after you decide to take the program is to go online to apply. So here's the shortcut link. If you type this into your web browser, and you'll be able to find it if you just, it's really easy to navigate to the apply page, but this will make it even easier. So it's like a little bit of a shortcut there. And if you have any questions about any of these things, about the admission requirements or about applications or that kind of thing, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And my contact information will be at the end. So next, Joanne will be talking about the courses in the program.
Thanks, Jill. So there's 5 courses, but they're all pretty short courses. So 15 to 18 hours, which looks like about 2.5 weeks per course. So it does go pretty quickly. So the first course, 111, is just a general broad overview of what autism is, what it isn't. We look at the latest research, we talk about diagnoses, that sort of thing, and really take a look at things like sensory processing and kind of the neurobiology of what autism is and why we run into the challenges that we do when you live on the spectrum. And then we teach a 131 next. That one generally is just looking at behavior. And what I found is you kind of really need to have that big understanding of behavior, that foundation, before we talk about the next one, 121, which is parts of the everyday. So in the behavior course, it's always so fun and so fascinating, interesting. We look at anxiety, mental health, and really trying to understand that every behavior has a function and what that looks like through the lens of autism. 121 is taking now the information you know from the first 2 courses and applying it to every part of every day. All the challenges our individuals have, from getting up in the morning, focusing at school, social skills, independent skills, sleeping, all of those pieces. We look at each component through the lens of behavior, through the lens of understanding autism, and come out with just a host of strategies for each part of every day. 141 is looking at education and learning. So IEPs, different ways of learning, all the specific teaching strategies that work for our individuals. And the thing that I really enjoy about this course is I don't teach one way or one philosophy. I've looked through probably 30 different textbooks, and I've pulled out what I feel are the strategies that work best for these individuals. And so we have many, many different textbooks, and I've just pulled out the strategies that work from all of those so that you don't have to do that work. And through all of this, we do lots of sharing. Everybody chats. I think the best part about this course is how social everyone is. Everybody shares their expertise and interests. And so we have this wealth of information. And the last one is 151, which is really looking at across the lifespan challenges and strategies. So transitions from all the different major transition points, as well as employment. So that's kind of the course in a quick review. The homework is usually probably 2 or 3 hours a week, depending on how much you want to read and how deep you want to go into the content that we've been talking about. For assignments, I have many different kinds of assignments. We have journals. You can do like little, some people like to do a presentation that they send me online. So like a little video clip. We have some group assignments as well. So some of them you're just going to be adding into the conversation online, and some you meet in person and come up with your answers when you're chatting together. So many different options and opportunities. Students find that part, I think, the most fun is all the conversations and stuff that they have. Back to you, Jill. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you so much, Joanne. So yeah, so like Joanne said, there are a variety of different assessments, and students are, yeah, it's not a final exam kind of course. It's really more about gauging your learning, and you learn a lot from the different projects that you do in the course.
So, and actually, Jill, one thing that
Yeah.
I did forget to mention, thank you for bringing that point up, is all the assignments and projects are specifically related to you and your interests. Some of the students have one person in their life, and they create a portfolio using that person through all the course assignments, and others have a specific job. And so the assignments are all related to you and your interests, as opposed to just a typical classroom assignment.
Yeah, very unusual, but a really great way to assess learning, that's for sure. So, okay, so next up, Joanne's going to give a presentation on really on the topic. She's got lots of stuff to cover, but it's all just absolutely fascinating. I've learned a lot in these presentations, and I hope that you do as well. So Joanne, back to you.
Okay, thanks, Jill. So we thought it would be fun to kind of give you little snippets of what you might be learning in the class, and it is online. So again, it's kind of different for some people. So just to give you a sense of what it's like, and just as a heads up, what I'm going to do is introduce some topics and ask some questions, but I'm not going to answer them. So you're going to leave with more questions than you came with, which is my plan. So let's take a look at some of the topics we're going to talk about. One of the biggest and unique challenges our individuals tend to have is their sensory system is wired a little bit differently than ours. Not all of them, but I would say every individual that I've met have sensory challenges. They might be sensory avoiding, so their sensory system is kind of more capable than a typical one. They might hear as well as a cat, so they can hear not only the conversations going on in our room, but the conversations going on in the next room. They can hear a fire engine way before everyone else can. Some of them have a sensory system where their sense of smell is considerably is stronger than a typical person. They might find light hurts their eyes. They might find higher sounds hurt their ears. Things like vacuum cleaners can be a real painful experience for some of our individuals. So they might try to avoid or protect themselves from some sensory input, or they might be sensory seeking where they don't get enough sensory input. One of the most common ones that we see are kids who don't have enough sensory input into their joints, so they kind of don't know where their body is in space. They're the ones that really like deep pressure. They like swimming. They like swinging to the highest point on the swing because it gives them more sensory input in their joints, and it helps them feel more kind of connected and knowing where their body is. So you might see sensory sensitivity, you might be seeing sensory seeking, and we spend some time trying to figure that out and get a sense of what that's like for our individuals. But the big point, that's kind of consistent across the board is not only do they have their sensory system wired a little bit differently, but majority of them don't have the ability to filter and focus the sensory stuff that's coming into their brain. So for them, all information that's coming in seems important. And so they have to filter and focus and figure out what's important and what's not, where a typical person does that almost subconsciously, and you're not having to use up your cognitive energy to do that. So I want you to remember this picture, and I want you to remember what happens when we put too much sensory information on the cart. This donkey, he is in sensory overload. Some of our individuals live in and out of sensory overload all day long. And the key piece to this, not only is it exhausting and really hard on their brain, but this little donkey in the position he's in, can he do what he wants to do? No. Can he do what you want him to do? No. So when individuals get into sensory overload, there's really nothing they can do. They can't follow instructions. They just need to end up becoming sensory re-regulated, however that is for them. So we have to wait and see and do what we can to help re-regulate them till those hooves come back on the pavement. Then they can get back to doing what it is that they wanted to do, or following instructions that you would like them to do. So the big question is, sensory sensitivity, how do we manage it, and what are the best strategies? And we'll spend time looking at changing the environment so there's less sensory information out there, and then how to end up giving them ways to become more sensory regulated, which could be things like breaks or giving them the sensory stuff that they're looking for if they're seeking it. So what it looks like for our individuals, I think sometimes, is a kaleidoscope. There's so much information coming at them, and they're not sure what's important, what's not. So then they see everything as important. So our job is to simplify and clarify and help take this kaleidoscope that you see and make it into something that makes sense to them. Because once they get it, and off they go. So when we look at perception and understanding, there's a sensory piece. Another piece that, sorry, I missed in the slide previously, is processing. Our individuals process information oftentimes in a different way in their brain, which creates a longer processing to understand what's going on. So they can understand it given enough time, but their processing might be significantly longer than ours. So if you think about the breakneck world we live in and the pace to which we learn and talk and expect responses, it just actually might be too fast for our individual that you're working with. So one of the other big strategies that really helps is to minimize how much information you're giving at a time, and then give them more processing time. So our little mantra is 5 words or less and 5 seconds to process. Sometimes that changes everything. So if we're giving them more time to process, if we're helping manage the sensory system a little bit because they have a hard time managing it on their own, then they can start to learn and grow and put all the pieces together. Those two components create a kind of different world that they live in because they see and understand things in a different way, and priority of what's important is different for them. So when you look at this image here, some people will see a vase and some people will see 2 people nose to nose. So those 2 images are completely different topics. Some of our people on the spectrum have conversations about vases where everyone else is having conversations about 2 people nose to nose. Can you see how socially that can become a challenge? Because perspective and understanding are just different. When you look at this image here, the question is, are those red lines straight or are they curved? And if you look at them, some of you will say those red lines are straight. And oftentimes you come up with that, not because it's what you see, but because you are using your basic math skills and looking at the line at the top and the red line at the bottom and understanding that it has to be straight. So what we perceive in our environment also depends on what we know and what we've learned. This is an image here is the image of an old lady. It's also the image of a young lady looking to the right. Again, depending on what you see, helps you understand the conversation or not. And that brings me to the biggest piece of social skills, which is putting all the pieces together to kind of see and understand what everyone else is looking at. And if you aren't able to do that, if you aren't looking at the right pieces, sometimes it's really challenging to have the same conversation or understand the same pieces of that kaleidoscope. For example, this picture here is a beautiful lady, maybe getting ready for the evening. She's got all kinds of perfume bottles in front of her. She's sitting in front of a mirror. So if you think about it, if you and I went out at break and had a conversation about this image, and everybody was talking about the beautiful lady and where she might be going and what she's getting ready for, but that's not what you saw. When you step back and take a look at this, you actually see the picture of the skull. And that's the conversation you start with. You can see how socially that would be difficult for you, difficult for your reputation, difficult for other people to engage, because what you're seeing in the environment is completely different than everyone else. So just some thoughts and ideas on perception and how we can help them understand what it is that's important in the environments that they're looking at. So just a review of the basic strategies. So how to apply this. When you think about the kaleidoscope and apply it to academics, you can look at these two equations here and notice that the things that are most apparent are the numbers. What's least apparent is the symbols, which is the most important part of the equation. So we can apply that same theory in looking at how can we amplify the most important part of this equation, which is the symbols. We can do a couple of things. We can just make the symbols bigger, clarify what we're asking in this equation. The other thing we can do is add highlights. So we can color code, which helps also helps our individuals figure out what it is that which symbol we're trying to use. However, if we're using color, we have to remember that some of our individuals are really concrete, and yellow means plus, blue means subtract. We wouldn't be able to change those colors because they would concretely think about the color for that specific symbol. Oops. So it gives you just some little snippets of pieces of information that are going to be talked about. I had a little fun there with the images, just so you can get a sense of what life looks like from different perspectives. The best part about the course is the self-advocates that come and share their life experiences. So I have about 6 to 8 different adults who are on the spectrum who have approached me to ask if they can share their knowledge with you. And by far the best part of the entire course. They all have so many great things to offer as far as tips and insight. They also are happy to ask questions or answer questions. So here's just a snippet of some of the information that will be shared. Scott says, and these are what they asked me to share to you. Scott says, if I can help one person find an easier path in life, then I've done my job. One of Kyle's favorite sayings is, see the able, not the label. And Matthew, who has a great, interesting insight into autism, he says, as a person on the spectrum, we have no background to filter our experience into. We always live in the foreground. And Zoe, who's our one female autistic person, she was diagnosed quite a bit later in life, in her 30s. And so she always says, autism isn't the end, but a new beginning of a whole new journey to learn and grow.
Thank you so much, Joanne. I really appreciate that. That was a wonderful presentation. I learned a lot as usual, and I have a lot of questions. So, and you may have questions too. And in which case, I would invite you to email me. So my email address is jpanton@okanagan.bc.ca. So you can just send through any questions. It doesn't really matter anything to do with the program. I'm happy to answer that. And thank you so much for watching this session. And I look forward to seeing you in the program. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.